Welcome to Tony's Takes, presented by Fireside Giants and Empire Sports Media. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, the leader of the Joe Judge fan club. As you can see, I got my judge's gown on, my judge's gavel right here in hand, and the leader of the Joe Judge fan club is here to bring a solo show. I'm going to do about 3 to 4 episodes per week of my solo show, Tony's Takes, where I give my takes on New York Giants topics. And a real fun part about this series that we're going to be doing, Tony's Takes, this is going to be fun because the members, those of you who joined the membership program on the YouTube channel, you're going to be able to help me make these videos by selecting the topics that you want me to discuss. So this is your way of basically curating the content on this channel. You can message me in the Discord. There's a little channel that says Tony's Topics. And basically, you're going to send your topics there, and then I'm going to discuss them on Tony's Takes, as many as I can. And these videos are going to be fun because they're going to be quick. I'm just going to give my take on something, discuss it, and let you guys have at it. And some of them are going to be film breakdowns, some of them are going to be just discussions, and a lot of them are going to be combos where I do some discussion and then get into a film breakdown. I'm really excited to do that. Stay tuned. I'm going to be doing one on Kyle Rudolph pretty soon and a whole lot of other great Giants players that I know you guys are dying to hear me talk about, right? So it's going to be fun. Of course, I'm still doing Fireside Giants. I'm just going to be also doing Tony's Takes, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So basically today, the topic, Tony's Takes, is going to be about the Giants coaching staff on the offensive line. So basically, we all know that the Giants offensive line in 2020, it sucked, right? It was terrible, and we got to discuss that because that's something that we're going to continue to discuss this offseason because the Giants didn't make a whole lot of moves on the offensive line. They didn't really add a whole lot of talent to the offensive line. They didn't draft a single offensive lineman, even though Giants fans were absolutely certain that they would. They didn't. So we're a little concerned because we're saying, well, the Giants clearly didn't have enough talent last year. What makes us think they have enough talent this year when they didn't really add anybody? But we'll get into that, and we'll get into why I think that actually could be alleviated by this coaching staff. Now, of course, you guys know me. I trust in Joe Judge completely. I've literally got a show where I'm designed around Joe Judge. That's my whole theme here. Love Joe Judge and think that he's done a phenomenal job, and he's really quietly made some moves on the coaching staff this offseason that are really, really interesting and might actually have a huge impact on the Giants offense this upcoming season. Like, could actually turn the Giants offensive line around. The Giants offensive line, though, let's get into how bad it was in 2020. So in 2020, the offensive line by far was one of the worst in the NFL. Here's some stats for you. They ranked dead last in pass block win rate in 2020 at 46%, only winning 46% of the pass blocking snaps. Now that's terrible, and we all know, of course, that Daniel Jones was on his behind far too often, and it obviously impeded his ability to play the quarterback position. Quarterbacks, what are they with a bad offensive line? They're nothing. You can have all of the playmakers in the world, every single weapon that you might desire. Look at Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl this past season. He had all the playmakers he could desire. Travis Kelce had like 150 receiving yards in that Super Bowl. Didn't matter. The offensive line for the Kansas City Chiefs was injured, and there was no talent on it. It was terrible. Ultimately, it cost Kansas City a Super Bowl. So what is a good quarterback with a bad offensive line? If the Giants want Daniel Jones to take this next step in year 3, they've got to improve the pass protection in front of him. 46% pass block win rate, not going to get it done. Of course, dead last in the NFL last season. He was pressured far too often, sacked far too often, and even injured far too often. And you can probably make the argument that the poor offensive line play had something to do with that. So the Giants need to fix that this year, but they didn't really apply any assets in terms of personnel to fix that this year, which was confusing, but I think I might have a little bit of a solution as to why they did that. So, of course, I'll get into more stats. Their run block win rate was only 18th in the NFL, which is a lot better than 32nd, but still, second half of the league. You know, there's 32 teams. This is the second half at 18, so it's slightly below average. They 70% run block win rate. This is according to ESPN, by the way. So better, but still not good enough. Obviously, the Giants' run blocking was far better than their pass blocking all season long. They have better run blockers across the offensive line. Andrew Thomas, I think, is a better run blocker than pass protector. Shane Lemieux was by far a better run blocker than he was a pass protector because he was actually arguably the worst pass protecting offensive guard in the NFL this past season, playing in 8 games as a starter. So, of course, like I mentioned, the Giants did upgrade their weapons in free agency. They got Kenny Galladay, they got Kyle Rudolph, they got John Ross, and of course they also got my boy Kadarius Toney in the first round of the NFL draft. That's all amazing, but what does that all mean with a bad offensive line? So let's talk about this offensive line. I know we just did a video, Alex and I, on Fireside Giants, the standard, normal show that we do. We talked about the offensive guard position, which scares the living crap out of both Alex and myself. And basically, Shane Lemieux is starting at left guard so far. That's what the standard lineup has been through minicamp and all of that this summer. They've had left tackle Andrew Thomas, that's a given. Left guard Shane Lemieux. Center Nick Gates. Right guard Will Hernandez, which is not really a surprise, but it's definitely interesting. And then right tackle Matt Parrott. You guys know me. I'm a huge Matt Parrott fan. I was a huge Matt Parrott fan before he was even drafted by the Giants. He was like my guy, if you want to call him that, leading up to the 2020 NFL draft. I thought that he would have been the perfect steal in the third round for the Giants at 99 overall. Then they took him at 99 overall, and I absolutely lost it. I was so excited that day. I thought that was just awesome to see my player that I wanted them to take at 99 go at 99. Even the day of that draft, not to get on too much of a tangent, I posted a mock draft where the Giants took him at 99 in my mock draft. So, still proud of that one, and still think that Matt Parrott, especially now that he's going to be getting the starting role, I do believe in him as a long-term starter on the Giants offensive line at right tackle. But let's discuss this offensive line, because this is a unit that's really wildly young, okay? So basically, the oldest players on your starting offensive line are Will Hernandez, who's 25 years old, and Nick Gates, who's 25 years old. Andrew Thomas is 22, Shane Lemieux is 24, and Matt Parrott is also 24. So basically, everybody's 25 or under, which is extremely, extremely young. And of course, when you have youth on the offensive line, you have growing pains, you have inexperience, you have just inconsistency. A lot of problems that come along with being a young offensive line unit. Andrew Thomas going into his second season, Shane Lemieux, his second season, Matt Parrott, second season, Nick Gates, third season, and Will Hernandez, his fourth season. That's the experience that you have on this offensive line. There's no veterans. You're calling Will Hernandez your veteran. Of course, you've got some backups who are veterans. Zach Fulton, 29 years old. Nate Solder, of course, is returning. He's 33. You got Jonathan Harrison at 29 and Chad Slade also at 29. And then, of course, Brett Hedgie, we'll mention him real quickly as an undrafted free agent out of Florida. You got some depth there. Is any of it really high quality? No. Some of them are veterans, though, which does help with the experience in the locker room and all that, yada, yada, yada. But really, the chief concern with this offensive line is inexperience. Because Andrew Thomas is a talented player, but he really struggled in his rookie season. Granted, he was a rookie and he was playing through an injury, but he struggled. And you don't know. As a young player, will he turn it around? I think he will. But who knows how quickly he turns around. Is this a year 2 breakout or is this a year 3 breakout? We don't know yet. Same thing with Shane Lemieux. Showed some promise in the run blocking game. Struggled immensely as a pass protector. In year 2, will he be better? I hope so. Nick Gates looked really solid in his first season as a starting center, but he did struggle in the first half of the season. Really started to put it all together towards the second half of the year. Let's see what he can do in his fourth season. I think that he will be a good, really good starter at center for the Giants for a long while. Then you got Will Hernandez. And of course, like I mentioned, the guard positions are both just huge question marks. Will Hernandez, year 4, what's he going to do, right? Like, how is he going to perform? He started off at left guard. He lost his starting job after 8 games last season. Of course, he did get COVID. He had a long-term battle with COVID, apparently. There was a lot of different symptoms and side effects that were affecting him long-term. Plus, he was apparently dealing with an injury, according to his offensive line trainer, Duke Manyweather. So I think that's something to keep an eye on. He's healthy now. He's switching to right guard. It looks like he's lost weight, added muscle, looks a lot more lean and athletic. He could actually return to form and play really well this season at right guard. Will Hernandez might actually have a huge bounce back year, but he also might not. He hasn't been good the past 2 seasons. He was good his rookie season. The past 2 seasons have been wildly inconsistent. So who knows what you're getting with Will Hernandez? That's why he's just a huge question mark there. That's why Shane Lemieux is a huge question mark. What are you getting with these guys? We don't know. They're young. They're inexperienced. They're not established veterans. And that's the fear of this offensive line. Matt Parrott, going into his second season, we saw him in some limited quantity of snaps last year. I was impressed. I think most people were, but we need to see more. Can he replicate that into a starting job? Can he take that next step? I think he can. I think he will, but it's a question mark. Like everybody else on the offensive line, literally all 5 of these starting positions are question marks. For the depth, though, you do have Nate Solder, who's a pretty solid swing tackle and depth piece at offensive tackle, and Zach Fulton is going to be a solid depth piece at the interior of the offensive line, though we don't really want to see him starting on the field now, do we? I think he let up the most sacks in the NFL last season, something crazy like that, and then the rest of the depth guys. But moving on from the personnel, the players that are on this coaching staff, or on this offensive line, I want to move on to the coaching staff, because this is where things get really interesting, and this is what the main topic of the video is the offensive line, the coaching staff, and how that's going to affect all of these young players that I just gave my takes on. Coaching staff, let's talk about Mark Colombo. So basically, we all know what happened last year with the Giants offensive line and their coaching staff there. Mark Colombo was brought in to be the offensive line coach. He sucked. He got his ass kicked by Joe Judge, and he was fired, right? He was insubordinate. The whole rumor about the fist fight, you think you guys really believe or expect me to believe that Mark Colombo beat Joe Judge in a fist fight? Hell to the no. Joe Judge definitely kicked his ass and gave him the boot. That's a tongue twister. Dave DeGuglielmo came in instead. Giants offensive line didn't get that much better. It improved marginally with Dave DeGug, and basically now we moved on from him as well. Rob Sale is the new offensive line coach, and I'm really, really, really excited by that hiring by Joe Judge. Rob Sale is a young coach who is 41 years old. This is his first year coaching in the NFL. He has 14 years of collegiate experience, though, and he is a former offensive coordinator at University of Louisiana at Lafayette, whatever it's called. He was an offensive coordinator there, which might foreshadow that he could potentially take over in some play calling role down the road with the New York Giants. I don't know, but I think it's cool to see that he did have play calling experience in college, because now that he's here in the NFL, just means he has more skill, more talent in his repertoire. He has a lot of different things that he can do. One thing that I really like about him, though, he has experience working with young offensive linemen. We just talked about how young this Giants offensive line is, 25 years or younger, all of them. You have some college players who play up to 25 years old. That's a thing. And that's right up Rob Sale's alley. He's been coaching collegiate players throughout his entire career, and now he's going to be coaching more young offensive linemen, and I think that's going to be a really nice transition for him, and it's going to make for an easy transition for these players with their new offensive line coach, being that he's a guy who's comfortable working with young players, and he's pretty young himself. Joe Judge described him as a really energetic on-the-field coach, which I think I love that. I love the idea of that, just this energetic coach getting in there and working with these young offensive linemen. And then, of course, you do have some continuity with the coaching staff, because the assistant offensive line coach has been here since 2018. His name is Ben Wilkerson, 6th season as a coach in the NFL, and he was on staff in the 2020 season, so there is some continuity with the guys that were here last year with Ben Wilkerson. But he's another really, really young guy. Again, only 6 seasons as a coach. Another young offensive coach. 2 young guys working with the offensive line there. I think that's a recipe for success. But here's where things get really interesting and exciting. Love what Joe Judge did with the changes on the coaching staff this offseason. So, in addition to Rob Sale and Ben Wilkerson as the offensive line coaches, Joe Judge also brought in Pat Flaherty. Now, that name might sound familiar to a lot of you Giants fans who've been following the team for a long time. Pat Flaherty has 40 years of coaching experience, including 20 years in the NFL. And he coached the Giants offensive line from 2004 to 2015. So he coached both of those Super Bowls that Eli Manning won. Now, I know the Giants had struggles on the offensive line throughout Eli Manning's career, but for a time there was some pretty good talent on the line. You think of guys like Dave Deal, Chris Snee, Sean O'Hara, Rich Soyber, Kareem McKenzie, David Bass. There were some good offensive linemen that Pat Flaherty was able to coach and develop into pretty solid players. Now, here's how Joe Judge sees Pat Flaherty. Let's read these quotes about Flaherty. He said Pat Flaherty is going to work in a consultant role with both of the offensive and defensive staffs, which I think is interesting, taking his 40 years of coaching experience, applying it to both sides of the ball for the Giants this upcoming season. But I like this quote a lot. Quote, part of the strength is we've got 2 young offensive line coaches with Rob Sale and Ben Wilkerson, and Pat's a good sounding board for those 2 guys to have. That's what Joe Judge said, and I completely agree. I think that's perfect. You've got these younger offensive line coaches who are kind of inexperienced with the NFL game. Like Rob Sale never coached in the NFL, but now he has Pat Flaherty to learn from. He can ask questions to Pat Flaherty, who's there as an assistant, a consultant. He can say, hey, Pat, I don't really know how to coach at the NFL level yet. Can you help get me up to speed? You've been coaching for 40 years. You coached the Giants offensive line for 12 years. help me help the Giants offensive line. I think that's like the perfect mentor role. We've seen the Giants in the past go with like Antoine Bethea as a mentor player safety, right? Okay, whatever. I would rather get a good offensive line coach who's young and then get an older offensive line coach who's established to teach this offensive line coach how to do his job properly. And that's exactly what Joe Judge has done here with Pat Flaherty and the New York Giants and Robert Sale. Love that so much. And then here's another move that I thought was really interesting. I'm going to make a whole nother YouTube video just on this topic. Freddie Kitchens. Guys, remember him? Was the offensive coordinator of the Cleveland Browns in 2018, became the head coach 2019, got the boot, and was with the Giants in 2020 as the tight ends coach. Well, he got a promotion this year to senior offensive assistant. Congrats to you, Freddie Kitchens. Of course, like I said, stay attuned to that video because I think this senior offensive assistant role has a lot going for it, because I think this means he's going to have the ability to work more with the playbook and the play calling and the coach's scheme. We did see him take over as a temporary play caller in 2020 when Jason Garrett had COVID against the Cleveland Browns. He missed that game, of course, and Freddie Kitchens stepped in and called plays. Giants offense was a lot more vertical that game. The average depth of target increased in that game. That's something to keep an eye on, and that's really what the main point of my next video on Freddie Kitchens is going to be about. So stay tuned for that. But with the senior offensive assistant role, Joe Judge had some interesting things to say about it. Apparently, this is a quote from Joe Judge, his primary responsibility is going to be working with the front, as in the offensive line. So that's interesting because Freddie Kitchens, here's something else that Joe Judge said, has coached quarterbacks, running backs, tight ends, has worked hand in hand with the offensive line. Again, tying into having two young offensive line coaches with Rob and Ben, I think Freddie is going to be an asset up front, working directly with them and helping bring together the game planning, like all of our coaches will, but working directly with offensive coordinator Jason Garrett with some of the things that are going to happen up front. So as Jason Garrett builds this offensive scheme and builds the pass protection scheme or the run blocking scheme, because that's all part of it, that's all part of the playbook, as Jason Garrett builds all of that, who's helping him? Freddie Kitchens. So basically what we're seeing here is we're seeing all hands on deck. We're seeing 5 different guys working exclusively towards improving the offensive line. Basically, the Giants have just put together a little squad, and their whole goal is to coach the offensive line. Like, yeah, the offensive coaching staff is extensive, and they've all got different jobs, and they're going to be working on the playbook, developing the receivers, the tight ends, all of that. But the main focus of the Giants' offensive coaching staff this season, Joe Judge has made it really clear, it's the offensive line. They know that they don't have that much talent on the offensive line, and they know that they have a really young group of guys. But what they do seem to feel confident in is the coaches that they have coaching these guys. They've got Rob Sale. They've got Ben Wilkerson. They've got Pat Flaherty, veteran who's been coaching forever. They've got Freddie Kitchens, another veteran who's done a lot of work in the past on the offensive line. And then, of course, Jason Garrett as well. So you've got 4 guys whose main jobs are apparently focusing on the offensive line, plus Jason Garrett also helping work the offensive line. So you really have a little squad dedicated just to making the offensive line better. I think that's awesome, and I think that's really going to help the Giants' offensive line maybe be fixed this offseason. That coaching staff just focusing on the offensive line might just fix it, might just help all of these young players develop really, really quickly, because you just have this hyper-focusing on the offensive line. That's the main objective. Improve that, develop that area. And that's what all of these coaches were brought onto the staff to do by Joe Judge. So I got to give a lot of credit, all the credit in the world, to my man, Joe Judge. You guys know how much I love our King Judge. And I just got to say, I think he did a phenomenal job this offseason. These were really quiet moves that I don't see anybody talking about, but he rearranged this whole offensive coaching staff just to focus on the offensive line's development, knowing that this is a young group, a group that might not be the most talented, no established veterans on the starting offensive line. Let's get as much coaching experience as we can to develop these young guys and turn them into really good pros. That's what Joe Judge is doing, and I can't wait to see that happen. So let me know down below, what do you think of the Giants' new coaching staff? Do you think that the Giants' offensive line is going to develop? Do you think that these guys can fix the Giants' offensive line? Can the combo of Rob Sale, Ben Wilkerson, Pat Flaherty, Freddie Kitchens, can that get it done? Can that fix all the problems that we see on the Giants' offensive line? Maybe not. But can it help the Giants' offensive line creep towards average? Hopefully, because that's really all the Giants need. They don't need to have the best offensive line in the league when you have the playmakers that they do. They just need something average, something to get the job done and allow Daniel Jones time in the pocket to get the ball to those playmakers, or allow Saquon Barkley to find some rushing lanes and make some plays. We just need about an average offensive line. And if this coaching staff, it has a lot of talent, and all that talent's focused on the offensive line, if they can do their job the way that we expect them to, we could see that offensive line improve drastically. That's my take on it. That's Tony's take. I want to hear your guys' takes down below in the comment section on YouTube. Please let me know what you think about this. Do you think that Joe Judge has done a phenomenal job with this coaching staff? Do you think that these coaching changes are really going to have a huge impact on the Giants' offensive line? Or are you a pessimist? Do you think that the Giants' offensive line is going to suck this year like it sucked last year because they didn't add any talent to it? Very possible. It's a real strong possibility that happens. If that does, hopefully that Daniel Jones is just really, really good and he's able to have a breakout season regardless. Really hope that that's the case. But anyway, that's Tony's Takes, episode 1. That's what I have for you this time. Just talking about the coaching staff and the changes that Joe Judge made. But let me know down in the comment section below your takes on this, of course. And stay tuned for more Tony's Takes, more Fireside Giants, a lot of elite content coming your way. Of course, we're going to be rolling out the Madden stuff soon. We're going to be rolling out the fantasy football stuff soon. Got a whole lot coming your way, and I can't wait to do it, man. I'm excited. Stay tuned. Subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you ring the bell so you don't miss a video. If you are subscribed, leave a like so I know that you enjoyed this video. Comment down below. Leave some kind words if you so please. And, of course, subscribe to us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, of course. Check out Empire Sports Media for great New York Giants content written, of course. We'll catch you guys on the next one. Make sure you join the membership down below if you're interested. And stay tuned for a lot more elite content. Can't wait to deliver it to you guys. And anyway, that's my Tony's Take. Go Giants.